but one way you depended on him in a very different way to what a lot of people would is just recently, a few years back, you made a massive life change career-wise.
Yeah.
And that's huge. That's huge for anyone to do at any age. But for you to do with a family that you're supporting, you're taking care of, and with years of experience, you went into something completely different. Can you explain to us
So different.
what was going on?
So I left school, got into real estate for a few years with a really, really good office and a great boss. Like a great teacher, sales and
Yeah.
negotiating, all that sort of stuff. Really, really good. I took that on to, I got into finance. I took everything I learned there into finance in my cousin's company at the time. That was doing really well. It was just like a up and coming company doing really, really well. And he just said to me once, he goes, Mick, why don't you come over? Like, come over, I'll teach you the ropes. I'll teach you home loans and finance, and then maybe go out on your own, like open up like a franchise, like a licensee branch. I was like, wow, okay, that sounds good. And I was probably 22 at the time. And I think I was engaged. I think we were engaged at the time. And I thought, okay, this is probably the time to do it. Don't have kids. We've got low expenses. And I was taking a pay cut to go from the real estate office I was in to go with him. So jumped in and just remember loving it right away. Just loved the industry. Like, it was a mortgage management company. So they did home loans. They would borrow money from the money markets, rebrand it. So, it was like white label, which is like rebranding it into your own product and selling it to the public. Sort of like how Wizard Home Loans was back in the day. And we were a non-bank lender. Such an exciting industry. So good. And I loved it. I actually thrived in it. Like, thank God. Like, it was such a great move. And my cousin, who took me under his wings as well, we'd go out every Wednesday for dinner. I blame him as well for the weight that I've put on. But, and he would just educate me and teach me. And
That's awesome.
It was so good. It was so good. And probably it would have been about 03. I went out on my own. So I was young. I was, 23, 24.
Wow.
Went out on my own, opened up my own business under his banner. And just, man, we just, thank God. It was such a good industry. Just did really, really well. Like it was just at that time as well where finance was
peak.
it was easy to land, So, but it was great. It was a great time. So I thought I'd retire in this industry, and I just, things change over the years, sort of moved into the financial planning world, and sort of just kept expanding a little bit, got into the brokering side where you're dealing directly with the banks. I get to, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Actually, probably 4 years ago, and I just remember I would often pray, Lord, when it's time for me to get out of the industry and just, sell my business, just you got to make it clear, please, because I love what I do. I really, really love what I do. Make it clear for me. And I remember back in, I think it would have been 17, we got back from an overseas trip, went to one of those sort of conferences that they have every few months. And it was just from there, I just felt like the things that I was hearing, I just kind of just felt like, God's just saying, Mick, start thinking about selling. Mick, start thinking about selling the business. Get out of the industry. Get out of the industry. And it just kept
Hitting you.
Yeah, and one thing I learned over the years as well, and still not great at it, but listening to God when He's talking.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you might think He's talking to you, and maybe He's not. It's just us. But then sometimes He is, and we could actually ignore it. So I sort of started.
So sorry, before you do get into that, how do you decipher the two? For you anyway.
For me, look, I would get counsel from, friends, meeting up with Pastor Mansell at the time, just, my mates, my circle,
Yep.
My mates like, Paulie, Pete, those sort of boys, and just really, picking people's brains and, listening to sermons as well and, researching, how to know when you're listening to God's voice. And I was speaking to our mate Danny about it, Danny Kay, just the other day about it. And one thing that I really picked up was when God does speak to you, He's going to often speak to you in patterns, like through patterns, like things will come your way. You might be sitting down listening to a sermon, and all of a sudden this sermon is smack bang, like it's just right on what you're going through. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, man, like, this whole sermon just for me? Like, there's 200 people here. Is this just for me, this sermon? Or I might get a phone call from someone. And I remember that, you know, I'd get a phone call from someone. And God's not always going to use a Christian. He might use somebody else
Yeah, 100%.
just to put something, you know, on our hearts, you know what I mean? And that's, I got a phone call from a mate saying, I'm getting out of the industry, Mick, you got to get out. And he had no idea I was thinking about it at the time. And I was like, well, okay, that's from the Lord too. So it's just little things like that. Just, you know, again, counsel from friends, just speaking to, and just weighing it up. And obviously with my wife, sitting down going, look, this is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it though. I did not want to do it. Loved what I'd done, you know, like I loved the industry. I had built a nice little business, you know, thank God. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to sell, but I'm just like, okay, I'm going to make a decision. Do I ignore what I'm hearing and possibly pay the consequences later, or do I listen
To God's voice and
listen
go.
to God's voice and reap the benefits later and maybe see the blessings later on?
So when do you pull the trigger?
I just did it. I just went, okay, I'm doing it. And I just remember sitting there, I typed up the email to, you know, the organisation I was with, and it's like, I'm going to do it. And I promise, man, I just sat there. I reckon that email sat there for about half an hour, 45 minutes. I just wouldn't press send. I just wouldn't do it. But then I just went, you know what, Lord, I'm sorry, I'm just going to do it. You've gotten me this far, and I just pressed it.
Wow.
And you know, obviously, you know, got the wheels in motion, I guess, you know.
And then it happened.
And then, yeah, like, cut a long story short, like, when I actually just went, wow, like, I was definitely supposed to do this, was probably 6 months after I had, you know, shut shop. They came and took all of my files, you know, because of the whole transfer. You know, you're transferring your files over to another organisation. And I get a phone call from my cousin, and he goes, Mick, did you see the newspaper? See what happened? And I'm like, no. He goes, The Australian, quickly, you know, Google it. And I jump on, and they're saying about how they're no longer going to buy the financial planning businesses of their financial planners, this organisation.
Wow.
But they would, but at a much reduced value. And I'm just like, whoa. I could not believe it at the time. It's like, Lord, are you serious? Like, wow, thank you so much.
That is insane.
Man, like, that's when I just went, like, yeah.
I get it.
I get it.